Beverly, we often need to ask questions of our clients to draw them out and get more insight into their personal situations. What type of questions should we be asking?
Well, the questions we ask really depend on what we're looking for. Often in eligibility, we're looking for very specific information. We really don't want people to share all the details of their lives. Where do you live? How many children do you have? What's your source of income? So in those instances, I'm looking for very specific information, and the two questions can be closed because they don't really require in-depth explanations of things. But if I really want broader information, if I want people to really think, then I'm going to need to ask more open kinds of questions. So what I need in my toolbox is to know when I'm looking for very specific information, therefore a closed question will work okay. And when I'm looking for broader information, or really when I want people to really think, explore things, think about where they are, think about where they want to go, then it's, then I'm going to be better off using open questions. Now, for a lot of the case management work we do, I think open questions are our best bet because we really want people to open up, share as much as they can share about what's going on in their lives, and we also want them to think. But there are two kinds of open questions, though. I can ask an open question that's just designed to give me information. Example, where did you work before? Now that's an open question, but that's really information for me because the client already knows the answer to that. Well, there's a second kind of open question, though, and that's what I call an open thinking question. This is a question that's open, but I also want the client to think at the same time. For example, how did you get your last job? What did you do to be able to hold on to that job? How were you able to find a place to live? How have you been able to get child care in the past? So in those kinds of questions, what I really want people to do is think about it. And to really, now, when I ask thinking questions, though, I have to be prepared for something. People very often can't answer them because they haven't thought about it. So very often I'm going to have to use some follow-up questions to really draw them out. Very often we assume that when we ask people questions, they have thought about them before they came. For example, another one, what are your strengths? Okay. Now that question assumes something. I've been thinking about my strengths before I came. So sometimes I'm going to have to really pull those kinds of things out of people to make the questions work.
What is the difference between open and closed questions?
Open questions are, again, I'm looking for broad information, or I'm trying to get the person to think. Open questions usually begin with who, what, when, where, how. Closed questions generally begin with do you, can you, have you, will you, could you. Now, I could use a closed question, for example, if I want a client to make a commitment to something. So I can say, are you willing to commit 30 hours to working on your goal? Now that's a closed question, but I'm doing that deliberately because I'm looking for a commitment. If, however, I want the client to really think about something, really begin to delve deep into something, I want them to do some thinking, then the open question is going to be better for that. How will you get child care? Who do you think you could ask to help you with a ride? I'm really trying to push the person then to do some thinking.
Beverly, why not ask why?
Well, a why question is an interesting question because it is an open question. The problem with why questions is that they tend to make people defensive. For example, why didn't you keep your appointment? Well, my response to that question is often going to be an excuse, something that, that I think that will get you off my back. Or why didn't you do your job search? See, that's going to make me defensive. So a better way of asking a why question is to think about something. What do I want the person to do? For example, if they didn't keep their last appointment, that's done. What I want them to do is to keep the next appointment. So to reframe the why question into a problem-solving question. Instead of why didn't you keep your appointment, what do you need to do to keep your next appointment? Okay. Now that eliminates some of that excuses that people had intended to make, makes them less defensive, and then focuses them on what I want them to do, which is to keep the next one. Instead of, why didn't you do your job search? Again, I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to make excuses. One of the things I've been looking for is questions that don't give me answers that irritate me. And why questions will give you excuses, which will irritate you. So if you can reframe that why question into, for example, what do you need to do now to get your job search? Because that's what I'm really focused on, what they need to do now rather than why they haven't done it before.